Great. I think we can get started. So, welcome everybody. We're very happy to have you today on our privacy webinar. We're going to discuss today some of the challenges and the solutions regarding tracking and privacy and what's on the horizon for 2023 and 2024 regarding this topic. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that this webinar is being recorded. You'll get the recording via email in a couple of days. And if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A section of the Zoom software. My colleague Yogeeta will try to answer you in the chat directly, and some of the questions we will take and answer in the Q&A section of the presentation. And yeah, let's get started. So yeah, our host for today, it's going to be me. I am Alex Dumitru. I'm co-founder and CTO of Swaarm, and I also have today with me Yogeeta Chainani. She's my colleague, my co-founder, and the CEO of the company.
Hi, everyone.
And together we co-founded Swaarm in 2020. As you might already know, Swaarm is a performance-based marketing platform that provides innovative solutions in martech tracking and campaign management for agencies, advertisers, and partners that will allow you to track, manage, and analyze all your advertising campaigns. Okay. And the agenda for today, we will go through a brief history of digital advertising and privacy. Then we'll take a look at the prevalent tracking technologies that are out there. You'll look at the current challenges that we're facing when dealing with tracking and measurements. We'll take a look at the solutions that we have for this topic. And then we'll end with some conclusions and some takeaways, some of the things that you can do to navigate this complicated world. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session where we can answer some of the questions that you might have for us today. So yeah, before we deep dive into the topic, I think it's very important to have a bit of background around the privacy topic and around the privacy in digital advertising world. So internet marketing was always advertised as the promised land of measurability compared to TV and radio or newspapers. We had a lot more data points and we were able to much more accurately measure the actions of the users in regards with the ads that they were seeing. So not only were we able to count views, clicks on ads, and any other interactions, but we could do predictions on how the users might behave, and we could even segment the users based on certain features like their geolocation or the device that they're using, and many others. And this made internet advertising the huge industry that it is today. It allowed marketers to first get a glimpse of their audience and interact with them more in more real time than they were ever able to do beforehand. Because if you look at the TV, for example, the way it worked was that they would run an ad campaign on a couple of TV stations, then they would wait maybe for 1-2 months to get some statistical analysis, and then decide if the campaign has any impact on their consumers or not. But most of it was statistical, and it was a lot of times hard to grasp exactly the impact that it had. With internet, this changed. You could get results, statistics instantly. You could see in real time who's clicking, how many users you have from New York that are viewing your ad. So marketers were very happy with the solutions. And as this grew, we started having more and more publishers appearing and trying to create some revenue by advertising. And of course, they were not experts in measurement technologies for advertising. So they wanted to get some solutions from third parties. And this is when, let's say, tracking companies, or as I like to call them, measurement companies, started appearing on the market. They provided solutions for publishers and advertisers to be able to measure the most important statistics on their with regards to their advertising. And the technology that was used, especially in the beginning on the web, was third-party cookies. Now, later on, as social media and big tech started growing, they started building these user profiles because they had a lot of access to first-party data. They could now know what music you like, what movies you like, because users were giving out the information directly to the platform. And as this data started being aggregated in the user profiles, the industry realized that this is more or less a gold mine, being able to predict what each user might be able to enjoy in terms of advertising, gave advertising campaigns very, very good results. And they did not stop at first-party data. They started collecting data from third parties always. So you might have a social media platform like Facebook that wants to have the data that Instagram has as well. So they needed some way of joining this data together. And they used the same thing that measurement companies were using, which was third-party cookies. So of course, after a while, users demanded protection from their governments or from their platforms in terms of privacy, because it can be a bit creepy at times when the user profile is so accurate that it can actually predict what you're going to do. And of course, they demanded these protections, and we started seeing the first results in 2012, when, due to a lawsuit, Apple had to remove their universal device ID. And in 2016, from the European Union, we had the GDPR, which of course tried to regulate this market and tried to make privacy a more sensible topic and something that platforms should consider. But it had a lot of, let's say, unintended impact on measurement and on tracking. And of course, as you remember, iOS 14.5 in 2020, which disrupted the market completely, everything changed. And I think it was probably the first time when advertisers really had to deal with the technical problems, real technical problem in terms of measurement. And now we see the same thing from Google's privacy sandbox in 2023 and 2024. They're going to release more and more into this privacy regarding privacy tools. So if you're an advertiser, you have to prepare for these situations. And yeah, what are the prevalent tracking technologies that we have right now? Well, what is, I think, very important in internet advertising is the fact that you are able to join data that happens on the publisher side, like views, clicks, and so on an advertising, with data that happens on the advertising side, like sales, installs, subscriptions, and so on. When you do advertising in a more traditional medium, if you see an ad on the TV, the company that is trying to measure the impact cannot immediately figure out that you bought a product due to you seeing the ad on TV. But on the internet, it's much simpler. They can see that if you clicked on an ad, then after a couple of minutes, you actually bought the product. So this data that was combined, was joined, was very, very useful for marketers. And this process of joining the data, we call attribution. And attribution can be done in varying ways, depending on the operating system or presentation medium. For example, on mobile operating systems, usually the attribution is done by an MMP, a measuring partner, which can connect the two sides either via fingerprint matching or through advertising identifiers provided by operating systems. Of course, these advertising identifiers are disappearing altogether, so most of it nowadays is done through fingerprint matching. And then if your publishing site is on the web, the only solution that you have basically right now from the industry leaders, let's say, is fingerprinting. On desktops or on web platforms, The only way to connect the two, the publisher website and the advertiser website, is through using third-party cookies that are either implemented through an image pixel or through some kind of a JavaScript script. And these tracking technologies that are completely prevalent nowadays were disrupted once in 2020 and are about to be disrupted again in 2023. And this is why. So the current challenges on mobile are the Apple's removal of IDFA that already started happening in 2020 when explicit consent from the user was required. So in order for the publisher or the advertiser to have access to the user's ID, they have to ask permission from the user. And of course, both sides are a bit skeptical because users that are aware of their of how their data is being used might refuse or might actually close the app altogether if they are asked for such a permission. In Apple's terms of services, fingerprinting is prohibited, but at least for now, it's not clearly described when it is prohibited or what type of fingerprinting is prohibited. It's very general, and there were no actions that Apple have done so far against it. So we still have to see what happens in the next years. Now, that happened mostly in 2020, but now in 2023, we got the first steps from Google, which was the user agent deprecation. The user agent is basically a piece of text that the browser is sending whenever somebody accesses a website or an app that basically helps the servers identify the type of device that the user has. And this is, of course, used quite frequently in advertising because you might want to know how many Apple users are interacting with your ad versus how many Android users, or if they're using the latest iPhone versus using a more low-powered device, Android device, and so on. So since Chrome version 106, which was released already in February, certain information like the device type and operating system version is not present anymore in the user agent. So this already affected the market, and it affected actually some advertising agencies or advertising partners without them even knowing. We have discussions all the time with people joining Swaarm, and they're not even aware that this is happening right now, and they're not aware that this is affecting their campaigns and the attribution that is being done. And of course, Google is also aiming to deprecate advertising IDs on Android. There are many solutions already proposed in the Google Privacy Sandbox. There was no decision yet on when the deadline is, but most industry players expect something to happen in 2024. On the web, you have Apple blocking tracking scripts and third-party cookies since iOS 14.5. So no way to do third-party cookies. And as you remember from the previous slides, this is the main way of doing attribution. They removed support for third-party cookies in Firefox in 2022, and now Google Chrome announced that they will be removing it in early 2024, and by mid-2024, there will be no browser supporting third-party cookies. And yeah, what are then the solutions in this privacy-centric world? If you are an advertiser, if you are an agency, or if you are a publisher, performance measurement in marketing is essential. You have to figure out if the money you're spending on advertising actually have an impact. And even more, you have to understand where they have an impact, which segments of users want your product, and which traffic sources, which publishers are worthy of your advertising budgets. Yeah. So the ultimate goal when it comes to measurement would be to enable privacy, but without sacrificing advertising functionality. Because if you think about it, the measurement part and the user profiling part are two separate things when it comes to tracking. One helps advertisers and publishers generate revenue to continue creating better products, better content, and so on. The other one, user profiles, relies on spying, tracking, and so on. So it would be good if the industry could remove profiling without having to remove tracking or measurements altogether. And yeah, if you are a marketer in this environment, you have to stay ahead of all the impending changes. And this can be quite difficult. So in some cases, like on iOS 14.5, there were plenty of announcements. There were a couple of delays in the decision. There were articles and articles, messages from MMPs or other tech companies that were navigating the landscape, to agencies, to advertisers that this is coming, we have to be prepared, we have to integrate with SCAD and so on. And still not much was done until Apple actually released it and started breaking advertising left and right. And this was a big announcement. With Google, you get these tiny announcements and tiny decisions and tiny movements all the time. So it's much harder to figure out what is happening to your advertising campaign. Is this something that the user agent deprecation introduced? Is there some third-party cookie trial going on Google Chrome? Or is Safari will be blocking our tracking scripts? These all have to be considered when you're doing marketing. And I understand, yeah, this is not something that you want to do as a marketing person. This is something for the tech world, or this is something that should not normally be considered. So this is why, in the end, you have to trust and work with some of the innovative solutions that are available on the market. Because as an advertiser, you can't keep track of everything that is going on. And in many cases, even if you're an agency or an ad network, the amount of resources that you have to put in order to keep track and implement solutions to it can be prohibitive. Sure, the big players are not affected by any privacy change. They have tons of developers, tons of resources to implement everything. But if you're a medium-sized company that is trying to navigate it, you should probably look for some solution, pre-made solution there that makes it easy for you. And lastly, you should embrace change as a constant in your marketing activities. So understanding that tracking will change, privacy measures will be introduced more and more, should be in the DNA of your company if you're an ad network or an agency. And in the end, maybe all these privacy tools will help build a better digital advertising ecosystem and not only make advertising harder. So yeah, I was telling you that it's important to have some trusted partners that can give you solutions instead of having to implement it yourself all the time. And this is where Swaarm comes in with our advanced privacy suite. This is the industry's first complete solution that enables privacy without sacrificing measurement. Yeah, you are still able to measure and track your advertising campaigns properly, but you do not have to sacrifice your users' privacy anymore. And no matter the platform or the medium, APS, the Advanced Privacy Suite, has an easy-to-implement solution in its toolbox. You don't have to code anything. You don't have to change much to your campaigns. No matter the medium, we have one-line solutions. Yeah? So, for example, if you're running on iOS, if you have an advertising campaign on iOS, Swaarm will automatically be using the pitchain technology that we released back in 2021 to track the advertising campaign across the user's devices without actually using click IDs or user IDs that could identify the user. Even better, you can use the SCAD tools that Swaarm provides to measure the iOS campaigns using Apple's technology. So you can still run your iOS campaigns like a normal campaign, even though Apple is the one doing the tracking. When it comes to Android, both in app and web, because the user agents are going away, so Swaarm developed a solution for this as well, and it's completely invisible for marketers. We do it only in the background, yeah, and we collect the device data using a different technology. It's called client hints, and we do it without you having to do anything. Other trackers, other MMPs started requiring the device name or the operating system version to be provided by publishers. But as we all know, this just opens the door to ad fraud. Because if you rely on a third party to give you the data, then you will end up with sometimes fake data or sometimes just wrong data. Yeah. With Swaarm, you don't have to do this. You don't have to require publishers to send you any kind of information. By default, we we collect this data for you, and you have access both in the measurement, but you also have access to send it to your advertisers. On the web, and this is where I think the most important changes are coming in 2023 and 2024, we changed the tracking technology that we had from an image pixel that was using third-party cookies to our Swaarm JavaScript SDK that is able to do cascading attribution, we call it, which works in every kind of browser, even if it's an adversarial browser like Brave that is trying to stop tracking altogether, or block scripts and so on. With the Swaarm SDK, it will always try a solution in the order of their accuracy and always come up with a way of measuring the campaign. And what is very nice about it is that you do not have to implement anything special on the advertising side. You do not have to require your advertisers to connect complicated scripts, Google Tag Manager, or things like this, which in the end scares them away. You just give them one simple line of code, and that's it. Swaarm does everything else in the background. And the nice part about it is that, as opposed to the image pixel, where it was static, it could not, once you gave it to your advertiser, it could not get updated anymore automatically. With the JavaScript SDK, we are able to automatically update the methods of attribution as Google or Safari introduce new breaking changes due to privacy. So I would say it's the complete solution when it comes to web tracking. It's going to solve all your problems. And of course, for such advertisers that are very technically advanced, that have their own in-house solutions, we also support server-to-server tracking. Again, it's a simple integration that can be done in less than 5 minutes. And with this suite of privacy tools, privacy tracking tools, you are able to still measure the impact of your advertising campaign. You're still able to track what's going on with your advertising budgets, no matter the medium, no matter the platform that you are doing ads on. And in the end, you can look at the Swaarm dashboard and continue interacting with it and doing your business decisions based on accurate and clean data. So yeah, as a conclusion, or as main takeaways, would be that the performance measurement in marketing is essential, no matter if you're an advertiser, publisher, or a user. We cannot get rid of this unless we want to get rid of advertising altogether. Without being able to assess the impact of advertising campaigns, you won't have advertisers interested in promoting their products on the internet. And without the budgets that are going into the advertisers, the publishers will have less and less interest in providing quality content, in providing quality apps, and so on. You will end up with apps or websites that require subscription for everything that you do. You won't be able to read news anymore. You won't be able to play a free game anymore. Everything would basically be paid for. So in order to still have the internet as we've known it for free medium, it's important to still keep performance measurement accurate. And no matter if you're on iOS, Android, or the web, there is no current solution that will behave the same way in 6 months from now or in 1 year from now. So it's best to be prepared and choose a solution that automatically updates for you according to the privacy changes that are going on in the market. And Swaarm's advanced privacy suite handles all these privacy-related headaches in a very user-friendly way. We do not sacrifice any data accuracy. You still get your nice dashboards, nice reports, but you do not have to deal with the privacy changes that are coming. And I think we can do the Q&A session. Yogi, if we have any questions from the audience that we did not answer yet.
Yes, we do. I did try and answer some of them already, but we do have some very good questions, and I think I left them for the last because then all the participants can actually benefit from the answers. So I'll start with the first one. This is, as an affiliate network, what are the use cases that are first impacted and how can I take care of them?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, most of tracking is impacted. Yeah, right now you already have iOS and Android being impacted, but in the next 6 months to 1 year, you will have also web being impacted. So if you're doing advertising campaigns on any of these mediums, you should already be looking for some solution to help you navigate here.
All right. Then we have another question which says, I think this you touched upon a little bit in the last time, that there are so many incremental releases that are happening on the Google side of things. So somebody asked, like, where can I get information on all the privacy changes, be it Android, be it iOS, be it web? What are the resources that I can look for?
Well, I think, yeah, in general, it's best to look directly at the platforms, Google and Apple, to figure out what they're doing. You can look at the newsletters, you can look at the announcements that they make, and try to figure out what's going to happen in the next months. Of course, you can also use some of the publications that are out there that are covering these topics, like AdExchanger, for example, or even Swaarm's blog. You can take a look there. We always try to publish upcoming changes in the Google ecosystem or in the Apple ecosystem. But what's important is, I think, that it's hard to keep track of all of them. Yeah, even with iOS, when the change happened in 2020, I think we had announcements for 1 year straight. Everybody was talking about it, but still most of the advertisers were not prepared. And it caused a lot of turmoil in the market because of this. If you're working with a partner that is already taking care of these things for you, then it basically helps you focus more on getting new clients, doing your advertising properly, and you don't have to keep a constant eye on what Google or Apple is doing.
All right. I think in addition to what Alex said, what I can add is definitely we have some information available already, and there's also another blog post coming out tomorrow on Advanced Privacy Suite, our APS solution, so keep an eye out for that. The last question I have is, as a publisher, when is the best time for me to start taking measures? I think you could answer this on both publisher and the advertiser side of things.
Yeah, I think the time is right now, or at least as soon as possible. Yeah, because if you are not prepared, or at least aware of what's happening, then it's going to be very hard for you to catch up to the changes that are going on. If you're waiting too long before implementing, let's say you're an agency and you are not affected right now, or you do not do any countermeasures with regards to the privacy tools that are out there, you might see that maybe in 1 month from now or 2 months from now, some advertising campaign is not working. And then in a week from then, another advertising campaign is not working. And now you have a backlog of 6 months to catch up and figure out what change in these 6 months actually affected the advertising campaign today. And you spend more and more time trying to chase things that happened 6 months ago instead of focusing on today.
All right. We did receive one last question. I think right now we are out of time, but I'll try and take this one. Alex, maybe we can be a little quick. If not, then we will definitely reach out. This is a question related to the JS SDK.
Yeah.
What information does the JS SDK fetch from the user's browser?
Yeah, so it depends on how you configure it, but in general, the data that we take is about the main data that we take is about connecting the publisher side and advertising side. So what we're trying to do is see if this user that clicked on the ad on this website is the same user that purchased something on the advertising website. This is basically the most important data that the JavaScript SDK collects. But of course, there are other things that you can configure it to collect, like device information, geo information, and so on. And depending on the area where you might be in, like the geographic area, some things can be disabled if they're considered personal information. Some things can be collected. In the end, you have access to all the data that you need.
All right, I hope this answered all your questions. If not, then please feel free to reach out to us. I think as a last slide, we also have our contact information in. And from my side, that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining the webinar. And yeah, we hope that you'll safely navigate this privacy world.